T and so forth, just because he's a character that really isn't fun with the tools he has on an intuitive level. He's definitely a setup character. He has a lot of second order options, options that require instead of, I guess, a single option being self-justifying, like for instance Cloud's neutral air, there's no rhyme or reason to it other than itself. It's good, it's got a big hitbox, or with Pacman, everything he does sort of converges to this bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what makes Pacman so frustrating to fight if you're not familiar with him, is that you kind of try to take it play by play when the Pacman's sort of, going ahead of you, and, thinking 3 steps ahead of you. So while you're there thinking, oh, he's throwing an orange at me, he's thinking, oh, when this orange hits him, he's going to air dodge and I'm going to throw a Hydron at him or something. So
honestly, he plays a lot of trapping and setup potential. He's all about arming the battlefield, a lot like Snake, really. And I think another big factor, like you were saying, is the use of his different bonus fruits. You can only do so much with the key. It's just, lots of damage. But then you have come in, you use the apple, you're going to set up a bounce. The melon is the one I have seen the least most of the time. It's usually the hardest to set up on just because it's such a slow projectile.
Right. Yeah, and also, before I forget, I do want to point out, I was too busy theory crafting, but that was a really good offstage, I think it was cross slash, calling out the recovery on Pow's end. But KingIsopod actually has a pretty, against Pacman, this is a pretty decent lead, especially as Cloud, but it's nothing Pacman cannot bring back, because Pow is not only a Pacman, Pacman is not only capable of dragging a match out, but Pow is an expert at leading you into those traps you were talking about. So this is still very much anyone's game, but it is definitely, it takes a lot of mental fortitude, I think, as a Pacman to come back from really any deficit.
It's all about setting your own up. The throws of Cloud. I've heard a lot of people say Cloud is just essentially the Sword Mario, kind of like your standard man, your everyman, but with a sword. And I think that transfers over. He even has the same decent vertical recovery, but it's nothing to write home about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's actually an apt comparison. I think that's exactly what Cloud is the sword Mario.
Exactly it.
Man, there we see the melon like we were talking about, and it's it's sort of like a bridge. It's like Guile Sonic. Have you ever played any Street Fighter?
Oh yeah. The Sonic Boom is a great distance closer.
Exactly.
I didn't realize that you can't actually Oh, that hurts.
That's a pretty early stock, so this is definitely going to take some mental fortitude on Pow's end to come back from this deficit, but he's an expert. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it's all about setting the pace with Pacman. You can't just rush in there like a lot of Clouds, a lot of Foxes do. They can just dive in and start stringing combos together. Pacman, you really have to have that mental fortitude to know when to take a step back, reset to neutral, and start building up again. Yeah,
absolutely. And, that's one thing. I'm personally a Ganon main, but I spiritually secondary the Belmonts just because I love Castlevania so much. And I've learned to appreciate characters that are like that, especially Pacman, where it's, you really do, you can't always, you have to kind of work with what the opponent gives you. You know what I mean? You can't always, whereas like you were saying with Fox, you can't always just nair on someone's shield or force them to respect your tools. You sort of have to work with the tools they're giving you, and take a step back if you're at a deficit or anything like that. So
exactly, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. It seemed like after that cross slash.
Ooh, a jab gift. So see, things like that are so encouraging because things like that can happen, and that kind of helps give you that mental edge where you can just say, okay, I'm against Cloud. I can just give him a little tap off stage, and that'll be the end of him. So that kind of makes the deficit sitting in the doghouse a little bit more tolerable.
Exactly. And Pacman's gonna definitely get a lot of ground to come back here.
And this is sort of, it's always very nerve-wracking when Pacman closes the distance against you, because then you kind of feel, okay, I've lost the lead, I want to be aggressive again, and that's when Pacman starts flourishing.
It's true. He's definitely one of the apex bait and punish type characters. He's all about just waiting for you to approach while he's just pestering you with all of his nonsense. And then he can just come in. He loves his nairs because it just adds so much extra range, because I don't know, for me it's a little visually disconcerting because you have Pacman who's just this ball, and then he pops his nair and the ball just slightly expands,
Oh, that was a good. That's a good option coverage.
Solid whiff
for that tech situation.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Okay, good in there. We're just waiting at the edge for him. Knows he's got to be a little nervous and closes it with that bell to up smash. And that's another thing. It's in that situation, Cloud without limit definitely does not have nearly the pressure in a last hit situation, or cannot impress the kind of pressure that Pacman can with that bell, because if you jump, that's what Pacman wants you to do with that bell. He wants you to jump. He wants you to get scared and try to jump over it, and that's how the end cometh.
This makes me think of Crom a lot back when he was first out. You had a lot of instances where he was just coming up onto the edge of the same way every time, and you can't try to down spike him from directly above, because he'll just drag you in almost every single time. You got to find a way to pretty much just catch him right as he's about to hit it, right to his right or left, depending on your side of the stage. And that's when you'll be able to start kicking him off. I remember seeing a game where there were just plenty of counters. But anyway, back to the matter at hand, we have Snake versus Pichu.
Yeah, and to your point where you said that basically those who use Pacman have some kind of proclivity for item play and setups and stuff, and that is exactly like that. That describes Pao perfectly. He almost exclusively uses characters that are whose neutral or just gameplay in general is predicated on items. Snake, Pao, so forth. And Pichu is so light that up tilt is going to seal it. So Pao taking pretty firm control of this first match, and it seems like I actually didn't see if I
believe it was an up tilt.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember if. Okay, so yeah, it was Pao that did the counter picking. Pao counter picked or easy peasy counter or went to Pichu, and then Pao counter picked with Snake. So yeah, this is definitely, I think, a smart choice on Pao's part, because unlike Pikachu, one interesting thing that I think goes unappreciated about Pichu with respect to Pikachu is Pichu, though he does have an incredibly strong neutral, and good read on that ledge jump, is that Pichu has I would say a slightly easier time getting in because of quick attack having a hitbox, whereas agility doesn't.
Right.
So Pao can kind of control the stage a little more against Pichu. And not to mention, it's just against a character like Snake with his relatively absurd KO potential it's scary using Pichu.
But on your absurd KO potential with a tiny little mouse, and it just puts things into perspective. They may have nerfed Snake's booty, but they definitely kept everything else in him pretty dang strong.
Yeah, it's exactly. They nerfed his booty, so it made everyone else's bigger to make it easier for him to kick it.
I think that's exactly it. Ooh, that was a nice spacing with that up B over there.
Yeah, and KingIsopod, he's taking that survivability as far as he can. Pao generally just doesn't want to commit, I think, at this point. Throwing grenades, kind of waiting for a mistake to present itself rather than taking the initiative. But goes for that forward tilt and isn't quite as in disadvantage as I think he hoped Pichu would be. But KingIsopod not paying attention to that C4, it seemed, and got blown up for it.
I think, grenades are one of the best spacers for Snake, but I think that C4 is definitely the most important part when it comes to Snake's KOs, because when you place one of those mines in a certain part of the stage, it completely locks down that area for the other fighter, There's no way for them to really get over there completely safely unless they can air dodge like a pro, like an absolute god.
Yeah, and it's the... Oh, what was I going to say? I can't even remember. But KingIsopod bringing it back here, and again, this is Pichu, so Pichu has extreme combo and kill potential. Snake is a little bit heavy, but if KingIsopod can get just one clean grab in, and gets him with the up air. So that'll be 2-0 for Pao.
Yep, that looks like it.
So yeah, Snake is definitely, it's just a super interesting character. Pao in general